Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm coming to you with yet another Commander deck tech. I know I've been doing a lot of arena videos here lately, just because it's been fun to mess around with and easy to record, but Commander is still where my interests are primarily at. It's still where my heart is. I adore the format, and I never stop building in the format. Matter of fact, at the end of this video, I'm going to show 4 decks that my wife and I are in the progress of building that you can expect to see deck techs and possibly gameplays on if I can figure out how to get the camera set up for that to actually look decent in the future. So for today, we'll be looking at Arcades the Strategist. Whenever M19 dropped, I loved all of the Elder Dragons. Even though some of them, like Palladia, were definitely a little weaker, I felt like they all had a place in the format, with Nicol Bolas being a pretty decent Grixis 8-rack type deck when used in combination with things like Deadeye Navigator, make your opponents drop their hands, and then have a Reanimator package in the deck so that way you can reanimate the big things you made them discard, and just a really cool deck overall, and I thought it had a pretty interesting application and a different build than the original Nicol Bolas. And with things like Chromium, my thoughts went straight to, you know, play a tempo deck, a tempo/control deck using creatures like Nezahal and Dragonlord Ojutai to kind of give you a pretty decent top end and close the game out. Looking at Vivictus, I loved his Top Deck Matters theme and his land type build. And for Palladia, I really enjoy her as Dragon Tribal to get access to things like Sylvia Brightspear, as well as the White Dragon from C17 that makes it to where if your opponent targets one of your things, one of your dragons, you get to blow something up. So it's an interesting alternative to the typical Gruul and Jund and Rakdos dragon decks, and I still do love that. Also pairs very, very well with things like Odric, Lunarch Marshal, give all those abilities to your entire team, swing out. So even the worst of the 5, I feel actually has a pretty solid build in the format for the right power level, which is, you know, the casual to maybe mid-power level range. But Arcades, to me, struck me as the best one of the bunch, and also the most accessible on a budget. Now, I'm not by no means building this particular version on a budget, but you can easily do so. When I first got the list together, it cost me less than $100, and I was able to do extremely crazy things with it. Just overrun my opponents very quickly, develop a board state long before anyone else, and close it out before they could get their top end online. So what does Arcades do? Well, he's 1 and Bant for a legendary creature Elder Dragon, 3/5 with Flying and Vigilance. When a creature with Defender ETBs under your control, draw a card, and your defenders deal damage with their toughness rather than their power. So usually when we see Toughness Matters decks, we're in Abzan for things like Duran or Sidar Kondo plus Ikra Shadiki. So Arcades giving us blue does mean we lose some of those really cool black cards like Tree of Perdition, but we make up for it with some pretty interesting blue cards, and it gives us a little bit more of a control package if we want to run it. I personally don't run a lot of control in this deck. I only have 2 counterspells in the entire list, mostly because I was trying to get away from my usual build when I play blue, where I include, you know, 5 or 6 counterspells just for the control elements. So for both Arcades and Angus Mackenzie, I decided to actually cut the counterspell package down to either almost non-existent or completely non-existent in Angus's case. So let's go ahead and get into the mana base. I'll breeze through this because it's pretty boring. Command Tower, Ziggurat is going to make mana for our defenders. Windswept Heath and Flooded Strand. Yes, I'm running the gold bordered ones. I did not feel like buying more black bordered copies. Crows and Verge finds us a couple of our dual lands. Bountiful Promenade, Sea of Clouds. Bond lands are just amazing in the format. Buy these while they're cheap, guys. You really will want them in all your future decks. Running the Pain land set. Running the Buddy land set. Have the Tangos from Battle for Zendikar, or some people call them Have lands. I still prefer the term Tango land. Got both my Bicycle lands because they're fetchable. I am working on getting my shocks for this deck, but I'm going to be patient and just buy the shocks from Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance. So as you see, I have the Temple Garden here. And once they release Ravnica Allegiance, I'll get the other 2 shock lands, but until then I'm running the Temples. Sungrass Prairie because I had one, so why not? Reliquary Tower for the Nomax hand size, and then basics we run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plains, 1, 2, 3 islands, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 forests. Ramp package is also very small in this deck. I did not go crazy with Cultivates and Kodama's Reaches and Explosive Vegetations. like I ordinarily do with green decks, because so many of our defenders are super cheap, and we do have mana dork defenders like Axebane Guardian that can make so much mana that I didn't feel I needed a lot of mana ramps. So I just have Soul Ring, Rampant Growth, and Farseek. Into the walls, we have Sunscape Familiar. It makes our green and blue spells cost 1 less, so it's going to ETB, draw a card, and reduce our cost, which is super nice. Or if we get it down on turn 2, it lets us get Arcades on turn 3. Sylvan Caryatid, just solid mana dork. Battlements give us a green for all our defenders, and Axebane Guardian give us X mana in any combination of colors where X is the number of defenders we control. I could run Wall of Roots, and I know a lot of people do, but I haven't actually tested it in the deck yet. I'm sure it would do really well, but haven't gotten around to trying it yet, so I find that the mana dorks I have are perfectly sufficient. Some of our draw walls, we have Portcullis Vine, so we can sack walls to draw cards, and Wall of Mulch to do the same thing. We have Wall of Blossoms, Wall of Omens, Orator of Ojutai, Carving Caryatid, Jungle Barrier. All of these cards are going to draw us 2 cards when Arcades is in play. Geist of the Archives lets us scry 1 on our upkeep so we can really set up our draws. Mentor of the Meek basically reads when one of our creatures ETBs, we pay 1 and draw a card, because I think every single card in the creature in the deck aside from Arcades will trigger the Mentor, so just solid additional draw if we find that we need it. Stalwart Shield Bearers pumps our defenders +0/+2, so it makes them bigger, so they hit harder. Wall of Tears, whenever it blocks any creatures, they're all bound to their owner's hand at the end of combat, so really good blocker, makes our opponents think twice about swinging into us. Wall of Junk, whenever it blocks, it comes back to our hand at the end of combat, so we can recast it with Arcades, draw more cards. Wall of Frost taps things whenever it blocks them. Wall of Nets, Oblivion Rings creatures whenever it blocks them. Shield Sphere is 0 mana, 6/6 draw a card in this deck, which seems pretty good. And then we have some pretty basic walls, so we have Steel Wall, an 0/4 for 1. Traproot Combi is a meta call. You can play any wall in this thing's slot if green isn't very prominent in your meta, but I've yet to play Traproot Combi and it be less than an 0/5 for 1, which is pretty good. You know, 0/5 reach for 1, which in our deck is 5/5 reach for 1, is pretty solid, and it just gets bigger as the game goes on. Perimeter Captain gains us some life when our creatures block. Wall of Tanglecord can get the reach. Suspicious Bookcase can grant unblockable. Jeskai Barricade can flash into play, so we can instant speed it, draw a card, bounce one of our walls to our hand, replay it on our next turn, draw another card, and then draw a card off the wall's ability. Just great value. Fortified Rampart, generic 0/6 for 2. Wall of Essence is an 0/4 for 2, and whenever it's dealt damage, we gain that much life. Wall of Denial is, in this deck, essentially an 8/8 for 3 Defender Flying Shroud, so pretty big swinger. Wall of Ice is a generic 0/7 for 3. Hover Barrier is an 0/6 for 3 with flying. Glacial Wall is an 0/7 for 3. Tree of Redemption is an 0/13 for 4 that we can tap to exchange our life total with its toughness. So I've actually used this in a few points in the late game when my life has gotten pretty low to set my life total to a higher point, which has been pretty good. But it also just hits super hard. So Wall of Kelp is an 0/3 for 2 that we can pay 2 blue and make a Kelp token. And it's an 0/1 wall, so we can pay 2 tap, make a token, draw a card, which is pretty good. And Sprouting Phytohydra, which I don't see in enough Arcades decks. If you are playing Arcades the Strategist, please try Sprouting Phytohydra. It does so much work. Whenever it's dealt damage, we make a token that's a copy of Sprouting Phytohydra. The Sprouting Phytohydra doesn't even have to live to make the new token, so it can basically just block for days. And if you have something like Brave the Sands, you can really block a bunch of creatures, make a bunch of tokens, and draw a bunch of cards. Tetsuko Umezawa gives our creatures power 1 or less unblockable, which is pretty much the whole deck. While Sidar Kondo gives them pseudo unblockable if they have 2 or less. Our opponents just can't have flying or reach, but it's still usually good enough to get in most of the time. Meekstone, I don't run the Ensnaring Bridge, just because I'm not trying to build this as a stack. You can definitely go with a Staxy-like element and throw in the Ensnaring Bridge and a few other effects like that to kind of lock your opponents out of the game. I chose not to do so, just because I think that it's a little bit off of what I want to do with the deck. But Meekstone's pretty good. Creatures power 2 or less don't untap during their untap step. Nothing in our deck has a power greater than 2 except for Arcades, who has Vigilance. So the Meekstone never hurts us at all. Brave the Sands gives all of our walls Vigilance, so we can swing with them and still block with them later, and lets all of our creatures block an additional creature. That second line has actually saved me in quite a few games. I never thought it would be relevant, but it is solid. Primal Rage, give our creatures trample. They're very, very big and easy to jump block, so you know what? Give them trample, punch in, and really put the hurting on. Myshin, the Mind Cage, gives all creatures neg X, neg O, or X number of cards in our hand, which is usually going to be quite a lot. So if you want to run the Ensnaring Bridge, I wouldn't run the Myshin. Kind of go one or the other, because you either want to have a lot of cards in hand or little cards in hand for the Ensnaring Bridge. But what this does is makes it to where our opponents can't really fight us back that well, and also ensures that everything in our deck gets unblockable from Tetsuko, which is really nice. A couple of our quote-unquote overruns. We have Tower Defense to give 0-5 in reach for 2 at instant speed, Bar the Door to give 0-4 for 3 at instant speed, and Solidarity to give 0-5 for 4 at instant speed. We have Assault Formation as a backup plan to Arcades if he's been removed so much, so that we can keep our defenders attacking and dealing damage with their toughness. It can also pump toughness, and that has a train in the background. It is 2:28 in the morning, and I have no idea whether there's a train horn going, because trains haven't run through here in over 20 years. Spider Silk Armor gives 0-1 in reach to our team. Usually pretty good, lets us block the flyers that tend to get through us pretty easily otherwise, and the pump is nice. Leyline of Vitality gives our creatures 0-1, and when a creature ETB is under our control, we may gain a life, so we can get some life gain going, which, yet again, small increments of life gain can be really good in the aggressive matchup, and if it's in our opener, we get it for free, so definitely on board with that. We have Dragon Throne of Tarkir, so Arcades can sit on a throne made from his niece. It's honestly really good. We give him Defender, so he deals his own damage with his toughness. We swing with him because he has Vigilance, and then we pay the 2 and tap after our opponents have declared their blockers. Usually, if they haven't declared blockers, thanks to Tetsuko. Pay 2, tap, give all of our creatures +X, and trample till end of turn, where X is Arcades' power. So pay 2, tap, give our creatures 3/3, and even though they do block, the trample usually helps us bleed through. If you're not playing Dragon Throne of Tarkir in your Arcades deck, you really need to. I have closed out so many games with this card. I'm debating even throwing it open the Armory in the deck, just so I can find it, because it is a really powerful closing piece. Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots to protect our General. The 2 counterspells I do run are Arcane Denial and Counterspell itself. I've thought about replacing one of these 2 with Render Silence, as I've been having a lot of fun with that particular counterspell, or maybe Disallow to hit the activated and triggered abilities, but I'm not trying to go too control-y with the deck, so probably not going to. Removal, we have Swords to Plowshares, Beast Within, because hit any permanent, and Aura Shards. Every time one of our creatures ETBs, we can Naturalize, which is really, really good. And for the board wipes, not a single board wipe will hit the vast majority of our creatures, so Retribution of the Meek kills everything power 4 or greater. Slaughter the Strong is my favorite board wipe in this deck, and I've been trying to run this in as many decks as I can. Each player chooses any number of creatures they control with total power of 4 or less, then sacrifices the rest. A really, really powerful effect. There's a lot of threatening indestructible cards in the game. Avacyn is played quite a bit in my meta and usually cheated out as early as turns, 3, 4, 5. So being able to Slaughter the Strong, make them sack their big creatures, it's just a blowout. And it doesn't hurt us, because usually all our creatures have a power of 0, so we can choose Arcades and all of our 0 power creatures. We lose nothing and cut the legs off our opponents. Dusk to Dawn has some duality, killing everything power 3 or greater, which will kill Arcades, but that's fine. We could usually afford to recast them, and we'll do this after the swing anyways. And then the Dawn side of things brings back all creatures from our yard with power 2 or less to our hand, so we can redeploy them and draw a bunch of cards with Arcades. Fell the Mighty, target a small creature, kill everything power greater than it, usually another one-sided board wipe in the deck. And Elspeth Sun's Champion is here for her neg 3 to Retribution of the Meek, but the +1 to get soldiers is also pretty decent as chump blockers. There was a game where it came down to me versus my friend Logan, who was piloting his Gitrog deck, and he would have had me dead on board so many times if it wasn't for the fact that I had Elspeth plus Brave the Sands and a bunch of walls. I was able to block, play more walls, draw more cards, and I kept doing this until I found the board wipe and blew him out of the game. And I couldn't use the Elspeth as a board wipe because all the creatures were too small. I had to find Slaughter the Strong or Fell the Mighty, and I was eventually able to get there and just close the game out. I only have 1 tutor in here right now, and I don't know why. I should be running a Mystical Tutor alongside this Eladamri's Call so I can find one of my wipes, but until then, all I have for tutoring is Eladamri's Call to find a creature. It usually finds me Tetsuko Umezawa. And finally, Eerie Interlude allows me to reset all of my creatures in response to a board wipe, or even just at someone else's end step, to draw a bunch of cards off Arcades to hopefully close the game out. You can also include Ghostway. I probably should be running both, but I don't have a Ghostway. So, that is my Arcades the Strategist deck. Definitely a fun one to pilot. It's become one of my favorites. Can be built for super cheap and still be very effective. Now, I'm going to put this aside and quickly talk about some upcoming decks that are being worked on. I'll start with my wife's stuff here. One of them is Ronus, the Indomitable. This is going to be a mono-green stompy deck. Nothing too out of the ordinary, but it seeks to put out really big, fat creatures on turns 3 or 4, and generally just outvalue our opponents early enough in the game to where if they don't have removal, we close them out. So we have cards like Rothama, All-Devouring, Uvenwold Hydra, Beast Whisperer for card draw, as well as Risk Cards Expertise for card draw. Buy this now. This is the best card draw effect for green, possibly one of the best in Commander overall. And then things like Prowling Serpopard to fight the control decks. No, just a typical mono-green deck. Nothing too exciting, but definitely effective. The list I built online while goldfishing just does so much work. The other deck she's building is Grimlock, Dinobot Leader. Super happy to get my hands on one of these. This is going to be a werewolf tribal deck because she's been wanting to build one of those for a while. So we've got cool things like Huntmaster of the Fells, and Emmerwolf, and Gaia Reach Bandit. You know, all the typical werewolf stuff. Not a werewolf, but she does run Archangel Avacyn, or at least she will be running Archangel Avacyn. Flash it in response to a board wipe. Make our opponent, you know, our opponents thought they were about to blow us out. They didn't. On the backswing, we turn around, we swing into them. Archangel Avacyn gets pumped up +2 by our commander, so she hits for 6. Really good card. Needs to see more play than it does. She plays cards like Rule of Law and the Eidolon of Rhetoric, or I think that's the one that stops more than one spell per turn, because that way our opponents can't get our werewolves transformed back to their other side. And she figured, well, if we're going to make them play only one spell each turn, we might as well also make them tap all of their mana for that spell. Just cruel. But hey, that's how she plays. Upcoming decks of mine are Halar, the Fire Fletcher. Watched a lot of MTG Mudsta and fell in love with the deck. I had read it a few times, but never had the inspiration to build it. And finally, you know, after a really well-performing game on the channel, on the Mudsta channel, I just went ahead and decided to go for it. So we play things like Increasing Savagery and Strength of the Tajaru to give our commander a bunch of counters. Things like Doubling Season to make the counters even more plentiful. Kicker effects, so we can kill with our commander, so things like Verduran Emissary and Sentinel Wood Readers. And then, of course, Grafted Exoskeleton, so we can try to kill them in one shot with Infect. Super excited to get this going. Should be a really fun mid-power level deck. But the project I'm most excited about is definitely my Newmont the Devastator project. Been wanting to build a Jeskai deck for a very long time, and this is actually a conversion of my Firesong and Sunspeaker deck, converting it over to Jeskai because Firesong just wasn't working the way that I wanted the deck to work, and access to blue should help. So, you know, we've run things like Enlighten Tutor and Open the Armory to find our Sunforger, and then we find great Sunforger targets like Deflecting Palm, and Boros Charm, and Teferi's Protection, and Comeuppance, and the blue-white counterspells, and the blue-red counterspells. And I also have some pretty big finishers in the deck, playing big, fat, flying creatures I don't get to play in any other deck, really, so... Asperia, the Inscrutable, we have a few ways to make them reveal their hand, or at least we will, so we can hit them and go find a flyer. Also, if they've ever tutored with something like Enlighten Tutor, we can usually know that there's something in their hand. Gisela hits really hard, makes our entire team hit really hard, and can be tutored for off the Asperia. You know, Avacyn, Angel of Hope. I play this one a lot, but just obviously goes into any deck that can afford to cast it. There's a lot of ramp in the deck, so getting things like Avacyn, Gisela, and hopefully Aurelia will be pretty easy for the Newmont deck, so super excited to get this one up and going. So keep an eye out for that. So, yeah. Overall, this has been my Arcades the Strategist deck. If you'd like to see more deck techs in the future, definitely let me know. I still have quite a few commander decks you've yet to see on camera, and I would be very happy to tech them if you just want to see them. So let me know in the comment section down below. Also, let me know, have you been enjoying the arena content? It's been a lot of fun. I know that it may not be for everybody, but if you want to see more of that, I'll also keep that coming. Let me know down below. I'll see you guys next time. Peace, and take care.